and so Kevin, without further ado, let's kick it off to you.
Thanks, Matt, and you and the rest of the team. I appreciate you giving us this opportunity to investigate these options for Earth Day. And just a thank you and a hat tip to Ashley. As we were setting ourselves up in the opportunity zones, he was instrumental in guiding us. And I highly suggest people search him out for his guidance on these. So I'm going to share my screen. Just let me know. Are you seeing what I got up here? Okay. And
you got it.
Okay.
I don't know if you want it to be in presentation mode or just the general one. There we go. Now we got the presentation mode.
Okay.
Yep.
So my name's Kevin Maher. I am with a group called Cranmore Advisors. I'm partnered with a few people, including Mark Shepard, who's a pioneer in the regenerative agroforestry space with his New Forest Farm in Wisconsin. And in essence, what we are doing is using agriculture, regenerative agroforestry in particular, to implement proven nature-based solutions. And one of my frustrations was seeing a few years back that we have all these fantastic solutions that are well identified, proven, both in theory and practice, and they weren't being adopted fast enough. And in simple terms, nature-based solutions are practices to restore or enhance natural processes and ecosystems. And one of the wonderful things about them is they're not highly focused just on the carbon aspect of carbon emissions, although they do draw down carbon dioxide from the atmosphere, but it's a holistic approach using biomimicry and natural systems to increase biodiversity, enhance ecosystem services while doing that carbon dioxide drawdown. And these have been identified to represent fully 33% of the climate solutions and action we need to keep within an acceptable temperature increase for climate safety. Yet only 2% of climate finance has been dedicated to actually implementing them. And so there's these proven solutions that represent such a great opportunity. And one of the exciting things for me was to realize that there was a solution in my region of upstate New York that is amongst the most promising solutions, which is agroforestry. And the Epic Institute put out a report in 2021, just quickly to highlight, these are regenerative agricultural practices that can help us stay underneath the temperature 2 degrees, 1.5 degree targets. And the bottom two here, the pink and the yellow, are both agroforestry techniques. And I'll share how we're implementing those specific techniques. And agroforestry, for those who aren't familiar, is just the intentional integration of trees and shrubs into crop and animal farming systems. And they have both the environmental, ecological, economic, and then social benefits. And the important part for me is we can get these benefits while meeting human needs. Some nature-based solutions are focused on just protecting existing forests, which is extremely important, and a lot of other things that essentially kind of put sort of a protective boundary around nature. But what I think is missed in some of those, again, very important, but there's an opportunity for humans to interact with our ecosystems in a way that is beneficial both to the ecosystems and for us. And that's where the special benefits of agroforestry lie. So this is actually our first opportunity zone farm investment that we planted out last year. And you see all the little white lines. Those are future nut production and other perennial crop trees, and using a practice called alley cropping. And then in between some of these alley cropping, you'll see the purple arrows where we actually have another perennial crop, hazelnuts. And then the green arrows, where we can work within this system to integrate animals. So we're grazing ruminants, we're moving pastured poultry, we can incorporate bees, we can incorporate agrotourism. It gives us a wonderful opportunity to stack enterprises on the same piece of land and thereby generate even more value. And we're capturing over time, not just that vertical space, or not just the horizontal space, but growing up and capturing the vertical space with the trees. And so one of the exciting realizations for me was working with nature and biodiversity is not just good for the planet and what can be accomplished for the ecosystems and ecology, but this, I believe, is going to be a true competitive advantage for all regenerative farming systems. And this is just a quick review of the Ecdysis Foundation. If anyone's not familiar with it, they're out of, I believe it's Nebraska, led by Dr. Jonathan Lundgren. And they did a really fantastic study comparing regenerative almonds versus conventional farmed almonds in California. And they captured some of these special competitive advantage in that study, one of which was the regenerative farms infiltrated water 6 times faster than the conventional counterparts, which is not just found, so it gives resilience to both drought and flood and reduces irrigation costs. They sequestered 30% more carbon in the regenerative farms. Significantly higher microbial biomass and diversity, more invertebrate biomass and diversity, more plant diversity and biomass. The yields between the two were roughly similar, but the regenerative farms had 2 times greater profitability. And to me, that is a better business model. That is the production model that we want to move towards and what we are working to capture. Have the same production, increase biodiversity and ecosystem services while we're at it, with less input and less cost. And we can sell for a premium price point, hopefully, as well. And their summary, I think, says it all, that this style of farming can assist in combating planetary scale problems, climate change, biodiversity loss, agricultural pollution, human health problems. And this last bit is where part of the overlap with the opportunity zones comes in really well. It's the declining rural communities and economies. A lot in New York State, where I'm working, you know, a lot of these rural economies have really withered. And we have an opportunity to re-engage them and reimagine how we use this agricultural land and have a truly ecological economic development program, and putting all these different puzzle pieces together to really take advantage of things like opportunity zones to do so is really exciting. And so we have all these proven nature-based solutions. We know they work. Nature's proven them for millennia. And how do we incentivize them and get more investment into them? So I feel very fortunate that right here in New York State, where I live, there's sort of an excellent opportunity to put a lot of these puzzle pieces together. And the way that we're doing it is we're coming up with essentially a real asset investment opportunity, a real asset opportunity zone fund that provides diversification and inflation protection, which are, you know, well recognized sort of real asset investment profiles, then combining them with the tax benefits of the opportunity zone for investors. And along the way, we are taking advantage of other tax credits and incentives for agriculture and climate smart agriculture that are existing, and it looks like maybe more emerging. We're also capitalizing on the opportunity to take advantage of grants for climate smart agriculture. Last year, we helped secure over 400,000 in grants for our projects. The biodiversity credits, which were mentioned just a little bit before, carbon and biodiversity credits That's another exciting way to incentivize these practices and to really help unlock some extra value for what we're doing. One of the key bottlenecks in the carbon and biodiversity credits is actually having enough high quality credits on the marketplace. There were, earlier it was mentioned how a lot of the biodiversity projects really weren't what they were meant to be. So by doing really high quality projects, we're filling a need. And the other part of the need is the demand for regenerative food products is growing and growing. And so we're putting all these pieces together and kind of going towards where the market is heading. And one of our unique advantages at Cranmore is we are working in New York State, where we are 3 to 4 hours with drive to some of the best markets and in the country, Boston, New York City, Philly, and everything in between. But despite the fact that we are sort of well situated in relation to these markets, the agricultural lands of this region are amongst some of the cheapest in the nation. And part of that is the fact that, it's been a region that had historically been heavily focused on dairy, which has struggled with some of the larger dairies that have opened up out west. And so what we're doing is reimagining how to take advantage of these hilly lands, which are not super well supported or well suited for row crops or other agricultural uses, but are perfectly suited for trees and shrubs and livestock. And so this is I'm thankful Ashley was here to kind of run through some of these things. Again, some of the legislation opportunities provided by the opportunity zones are the initial capital gains tax deferral, the exclusion from taxable income of the capital gains if the investment is held for 10 years. And I really appreciate Ashley highlighting the fact that the depreciation is not recaptured if the investment was held for 10 years, at least 10 years. And in our context, that is really exciting because there's a lot of special depreciation for these agricultural systems that we take advantage of. And so to have the potential to really kind of give a turbo charge to those depreciation benefits is very exciting. One other aspect in terms of and a sort of a tailwind, I think, for regenerative agriculture writ large, as we've seen over the last year or so with world events in Ukraine and energy markets and fertilizer markets and food markets, the increase in input costs for agriculture have been very challenging, across the board. But with regenerative agriculture practices, inputs can be reduced or eliminated. And to the extent that you have that type of inflation in the background, that is an increasing competitive advantage for people who can produce high quality, nutrient dense foods without that sort of anchor. And that is part of the opportunity that's there. And the other aspect of it from the opportunity zone perspective is the ability to avoid the so-called inflation tax, where a certain portion of investment returns are really nominal, because inflation, if it's 10%, but inflation is 7%, your real returns are only 3%. By eliminating tax on the capital gains on the back end, it provides, the opportunity zones provide an extra sort of protection against inflation for investors. And part of the wonderful thing from my perspective is these perennial crops that we're establishing and these diverse agroforestry systems that we're doing, they take 10 years to really start to kick in. And so by really incentivizing and aligning the incentives for the investors with the productive capacity of the ecosystems as we develop it, it's just a wonderful marriage. And so we're working with accredited investors, and we're raising a qualified opportunity fund to acquire and establish 400 plus acres right in this region that we've been working in. And we have a network of farms that are now have adopted these practices and are going forward. And that's one of the exciting things with our focus on this particular region, because we're using crops that are, there's huge markets for hazelnuts and chestnuts, for example, which is our core crops. But they can, by having a key concentration of these products and these farms in the region, we can really catalyze the whole system adoption in this area. Matt, I see you have a hand
Yeah, I got
raised.
my hand up just because we're getting towards time here. Excellent presentation, Kevin. Ashley as well. I do want to just highlight a couple things. For those who don't understand the tax code, this is very advantaged stuff. You do need capital gains to take advantage of that. As Ashley pointed out, when tax legislation is structured in a friendly enough way, it does incentivize behavior. And in the case of Kevin's OZ, the behavior is good for the planet. So it's kind of a win-win there. And while favorable tax legislation doesn't guarantee that it's going to be profitable, if it is profitable, you keep more of the money. But the other tailwind that Kevin really has, that he mentioned on, and he and I discussed the other day, is some of the tax grants that they're giving on top of this. So he's got he's stacking tailwinds in essence, which is really, that's tax side, grant side. Plus it's an area where they're not making any more land, right? So I see Kate Larson has a question, and she's been asking some great stuff. So I'm going to give a minute or two to her. Hopefully we can get that quick, and then we'll go over to Thomas Morgan, who's also talking about real estate and doing that in a development in a sustainable way. And so we'll roll right into that. Kate, do you want to go ahead?
Hi, thank you. Love it. Love regenerative. It's what we need. I promote it whenever I can and want to see it grow. I'm just curious. I presume it's a bit more labor intensive to do regenerative agriculture versus traditional intensive industrialized, so to speak. So as we do that, as we grow that, are there any thoughts on how we overcome what we've seen in a lot of the rest of the agriculture industry in the US, here in the UK, which is that people ending up in modern slavery, foreign migrant workers coming in. We need to do the work, but very vulnerable. I'm involved in a lot of solutions around that, but I'm very keen to hear from our speaker if he's aware of any models we should be promoting that he's aware of around that.
Well, one aspect of our approach is we actually have, so for example, stock options have been used to great effect in a lot of businesses to provide, sort of align incentives of people working on companies with the benefit and flourishing of those enterprises. And we are doing something similar where we actually do have a set aside for the farmers and the people working within our systems to participate in the economic upside of the farms as we develop. So that's sort of built right in. And yeah, it can be more labor intensive, but we're using, there is some interesting possibilities to mechanize some aspects. But then, for example, when we're grazing livestock, we are accomplishing sort of vegetation management, when we are fertilizing, or the cows are fertilizing for us as they move through the systems, or the chickens. So we are able to leverage the integration of animals in the landscape to both provide a yield and high quality proteins, but also accomplish tasks that would otherwise have to be accomplished with a mower or some sort of fossil fuel input. So and that also allows us to sort of magnify the human labor by managing the animals. So there's a couple of different ways that we are looking at that.
Great stuff, Kevin. So thank you much to OZ Pro, Ashley Tyson, and regenerative farmer, OZ farmer, Kevin Maher. And